So very good afternoon to each and every one of you who have joined us today at this very important webinar being given by our very distinguished service officer from Amity University, Colonel Prakash Bhatt. So on behalf of Founder President, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, the Chancellor, Dr. Atul Chauhan, and all members of Amity fraternity, I welcome each and every one of you, particularly the students from various schools who have joined us today, the Amity Cadet Corps, as well as the students from other universities and the schools who have joined us today. I extend a very, very warm welcome to this very important, valuable webinar. If you look at India today, the new India, our India, is emerging as a powerful nation at the global level. We have economic power, we have military power, knowledge power. So these three powers we have exhibited at different levels. Even if you look at the recent history, we have exhibited these three powers: economic power, military power, and knowledge power. Now, taking the important military power which is required for security of your nation, today India has one of the largest professional armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, with more than 1.5 million people. Then the indigenous technologies like missiles, aircraft, radar, sonar, torpedoes, everything we are making in our country. So your country is becoming also a country where the defense technologies are being given a boost, defense industries are growing. So there is a very vibrant environment in terms of the security, comprehensive national security. So in this, why I am mentioning that 1971, 50 years ago, when many of you may not have also been born, particularly those who have joined us from schools, the cadet corps, people, the students from the various schools, you may not have even been born, but India exhibited our valor, courage, determination, conviction. Everything was expressed in that 1971 war 50 years ago. So today is the day, 3rd December, 50 years ago, this Indo Pak conflict was started. And then we were fighting at both the front, Western Front and Eastern Front. So we bought at that time on two fronts, we were fighting a war, and then we won the war. So this day is being celebrated, the Golden Jubilee of that 1971 Indo-Pak conflict, where India demonstrated the courage, valor, determination, and the military power, Army, Navy, Air Force, everybody working together, we achieved this and demonstrated to the world that there is no one to compare the Indian armed forces. And that was proven in 1971. So to take this message to each and every one of the people here and across the globe, that this 50 years of Golden Jubilee celebration of 1971 conflict is being celebrated. I must compliment General Gadiok, who is the Director General for the Amity Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies, one of a distinguished soldier of our country, who we are very proud of. And we are very proud of having him in Amity as the Director General for the Amity Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies, and also Commandant for a number of educational institutions which he is looking after in Amity for the military. So I compliment each and every one of you. General Gadiok, would you like to make some opening remarks before we start the deliberation? Over to you, General Gadiok.
Thank you very much. But Colonel Bhatt has not spoken to me about this. It has come as a little bit of a surprise to me. If he had spoken to me, I probably would have been able to, sort of form my ideas and thoughts about it. Well, anyway, I certainly would like to speak a little bit on this. Ladies and gentlemen, December 71 India decisively won the war against the vanquished Pakistan that resulted birth of Bangladesh. This was the shortest war in the world. It should be remembered by the youth. Shortest war in the world of 13 days when birth was given to a nation. The military confrontation between India and Pakistan, this occurred. That is on 3rd, and that is why we celebrate on 3rd. And I would like to inform all the participants, in fact, and the organizers and the hosts, that on 20th of this month, I'm organizing as AIDSS on behalf of Amity University, on approval of the founder president, Amity Education Group, we are organizing the Golden Jubilee celebration of a virtual seminar at a very high level, where we have for the first time the Chief of Defense Staff, who would be giving his very valuable thoughts on the Indian victory of the 1971 Indo Pak War on the Western and the Eastern Front. And I can tell you that the fall of Dhaka on 16th of December, that is exactly 13 days, when there were great nations, that is superpowers like Russia and United States, who were trying to intercede and intervene and give us very sagacious advice, that is to our Iron Lady, Prime Minister of then India, of course, Ms. Indira Gandhi. But I can tell you very candidly, we watched this war very closely as youngsters. We were just out of school that time. And I can say that Pakistan, of course, was declared the aggressor. It was perhaps the first time in a conflict environment that all the tri-services synergy, that is Army, Navy, and Air Force, manifested the desired unison to achieve the envisioned terminal objectives with very, very meticulous strategized planning and execution with utmost professionalism under its very capable military leadership. Overall, of course, under General Shyam Manekshaw, the Gorkha Chief of Army Commandants of the Defense Services Staff College. Well, it was done with the perfect, I should say, precision and one perfect option involved, but the Indian prudence and the collective wisdom prevailed as a strategic surprise and tactical deception. It all paid off, and it did not fail to impact the visualized ascendant, that is the end state that India had wanted, what Mr. Gandhi had wanted, and what the whole country in unison said, that all right, we shall go to war so as to be able to teach the oppressors, the tyrants, of the kind of subjugation which was going on, that is in that time East Pakistan against the Bangladeshis. And on this day, that is 47 years ago, ironically, Pakistan lost nearly half its century, half its country, its forces in the east, and had to publicly surrender to India, a great chastened depravity and defeat in the battlefield. A poignant reminder, I should say, to soldierhood that evil meets its fate. The worst thing for a soldier is to surrender. It is better to fight and fight unto death, so that Naam Namak and Shan is upholden. And today I can say it was also the largest military surrender, because I think it was about 93,000 troops of Pakistan which surrendered to the Indian forces in Dhaka. And the surrender ceremony that was headed, I think, by General Zaki to then General Jagdish Singh Arora, Eastern Army Commander, and the Chief of Staff, the very intellectual Jewish general, that is General Jacob. The Indian Armed Forces, they fought relentlessly with great gallant actions and intrepidity. And they combined the brilliant stratagems in the multidimensional domains of land, sea, and air. And thereafter, they got this for the 75 million, that is people of Bangladesh. I still remember this was a very famous quiz which used to be asked. And they all deserved freedom, equality, justice, and independence from blasphemy, oppression, and tyrannical subjugation of the human race. After very, very despotic, unprecedented state governance. In fact, that was the worst governance which came into effect. And concomitantly, India very quickly responded to Pakistan government's movement of its defense forces in the Western theater, because Pakistan, of course, under Yaqub Khan and Yahya Khan and Tika Khan, both the generals who had very cleverly planned these operations had to face defeat. And Pakistan, under then President Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, was also humiliated. And let me tell you that all this surrender, that is of the Pakistani forces, and redemption of the Bangladesh Mukti Bahini, that is of their famous ideology to gain freedom for their country against this oppression, was redeemed. And this happened on 16th of December. Over 3,800 soldiers, I must remind you all, of India and Pakistan lost their lives in this war. And the genocide which was perpetrated, that is by Pakistan against the Bengali population in East Pakistan, came to an end with liberation of Bangladesh. And the present Prime Minister of Bangladesh, she is very beholden. And we are very happy that she is the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, as she recognizes the Indian supreme sacrifice in the liberation of Bangladesh, and that we held the hands of her father. That is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And in 71, the Pakistan army began to commit the barbaric genocide of these innocent Bengali population, particularly the minority Hindu population in East Pakistan. And as it increased, Mr. Gandhi took a bold decision. And that time, I still remember, it was Babu, Defense Minister was Babu Jagjeevan Ram. And he, after conferring with his cabinet colleagues, and I remember at night, it came on the radio that he had conferred with them and spoken to the army chief, General Sam Manekshaw, who will later on made a field marshal after the victory. You can only become a field marshal, and this great honor bestowed upon him only after you win the war. And Babu Jagjeevan Ram spoke to Admiral Nanda of the Indian Navy, the Chief of Naval Staff, and Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal of the Indian Air Force. And they all decided to launch an offensive operation against Pakistan as what was perceived actually to be a very grand strategy. And the plans were approved by then, of course, the Cabinet Committee of Security, and the Prime Minister gave a go-ahead. And it is estimated, ladies and gentlemen, that approximately between 3 lakhs odd civilians were killed in Bangladesh by the Pakistani soldiers. The rape, murder, killings, and conflicts followed, due to which 8 to 10 million people fled the country of Pakistan, East Pakistan. And Indira Gandhi was very reluctant actually to launch a full-scale war. She didn't want to do it because she knew what is the burden. She'll have to face the continuous flow of refugees into India, which was multifold. But she appealed with great diplomatic blitz, which was unprecedented in the history. She informed all the world leaders that I am constrained to go to war against Pakistan on both fronts, and I shall redeem the lost honor and vindicate the lost honor of all the oppressed people of Bengal. And she did it very well. And this put pressure on Pakistan then to stop the brutalities. But India did not have much time. And the well-calibrated operations were carried out in 1971. And you saw the end effect. We won this war 2 our terms. Of course, there were lessons learned, which are going to be brought out very well by General Deepak Kapoor, the former Chief of Army Staff, during the virtual seminar, which we are going to conduct on 20th. Thank you very much. I've finished.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you all know, our country is celebrating the 75th anniversary of our independence as Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, because we have completed 70 years, 75 years since 1947. And we are also celebrating this year the 50th anniversary of India's victory over Pakistan in the 71 war as the Swarnim Vijay Varsh. What better day can be there than today. That is the 3rd of December, which is the day of commencement of India-Pakistan War in 1971. To pay our tributes and homage to all those who fought for a country and who gave their supreme sacrifice, leading to the India's comprehensive victory and creation of a new country, Bangladesh. In the next 1 hour or so, it will be my endeavor to apprise you of the various causes, about the operations and the heroic deeds of our soldiers, sailors, and airmen. The 71 War is also known as the liberation of Bangladesh also. Before we go into the war, a slight look into the background. As we all know that the subcontinent was partitioned in 1947 when the country got its independence. And West Pakistan and East Pakistan and India were created. And Pakistan was in 2 wings, the Western wing and the Eastern wing. This is an old map of the subcontinent where West Pakistan is there to the west and East Pakistan, which is present Bangladesh, to the east. And they were separated by more than 1,000 kilometers over India. And their ships and other your naval ships and your merchant ships had to circumnavigate from the south of Sri Lanka and then go to the other wing. So you can imagine the difficulties which they faced in moving from one wing to another wing. In 1947-48, it was the first Indo Pak War. It was a legacy of the partition. It was over Kashmir. And as you all aware, there were 3 princely states besides India and Pakistan: your Junagadh, your Hyderabad, and Kashmir. And Junagadh and Hyderabad, India had taken them over, they annexed it by police action, military action. And Kashmir, the king had to decide, and he opted for India. As per the standstill agreement which the British had laid down, the country, these kingdoms could go to either of the countries, to India or Pakistan. And then the war took place, and before he signed the instrument of accession, the Pakistani sent its raiders to capture Kashmir. And when the instrument of accession was signed, and then we sent our raiders, so we sent our army on the 27th of October, and then we liberated and pushed them back up to a certain extent. But portion of it remained with Pakistan, which is now we call the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and the Kashmir which is with India. And there was we went to the United Nations, and there was a ceasefire, and then the line of control came into play, and the United Nations observer group was placed there, and the decision of the United Nations was there, and those conditions have not been met, like the plebiscite, vacation of the aggression. So the problem remains. Then was another conflict, the Sino-Indian conflict with the Chinese, where the Chinese, by deceit on the political side, Mr. Chow En-lai and with our Prime Minister, they were saying Hindu Chini bye bye and other slogans, whereas they flexed their muscles and they annexed Aksai chain of our this thing. And our army was not prepared because our deployment was not there. But when the Chinese forces moved, we moved to the forward deployment in that area. But because we didn't have the clothing, the equipment, and things were not prepared, we suffered reverses. That was with the Chinese. Then was the Indo Pak War of 1965. Again, it was over Kashmir. This was Pakistan launched its Operation Gibraltar, which was sending raiders into Kashmir and irregulars and causing discontent, disaffection. And then Operation Grand Slam was launched. However, it did not make much headway. Firstly, the season, it was fought in the month of September when it was monsoons, and though very fierce tank battles were fought in the Khem Kharan and other areas, but most of the tanks could not move around because of they got bogged down in the sugarcane fields and the irrigated areas in the Punjab area. Initially, they had launched in Kashmir, and India then had opened a front in Punjab to reduce the pressure and release the pressure there in Kashmir. After the 22-day war, through mediation of Russia, Tashkent talks were held where Mr. Ayub Khan had gone to Tashkent, and Lal Bahadur Shastri, who was the prime minister, he also had gone there. They had a truce, and unfortunately, our prime minister, the day he signed it, he passed away in a heart attack. The first time our prime minister or head of state dying in a foreign land. Then his body had to be flown back. As per the agreement, it was status quo ante. Whichever areas both the countries had occupied and captured, they had to return. Like we had suffered reverses in Chamb area. Chamb area is a sensitive area in 71 and 65 due to the terrain and the topography. It is disadvantage to us. So that area, because we had to return that area, and Haji Pir Pass, which we had captured in the Uri area, and that also we had to give it back to Pakistan. And Chamb area, we got it back from Pakistan. That was a 65. So it is called a stalemate. 65, they say it's called a draw. And General J.N. Chaudhary was the chief that time. Now we come to the Indo Pak War of 1971, which is a subject of my talk today. Before we understand the war, the operations, it is important to understand the geography of that area. So I'll briefly discuss the geography of the area, the terrain, the topography of that area. This is a map of Bangladesh. Then it was East Pakistan. To the west is West Bengal, where India is written. And to the north also, the northwest is West Bengal, North Bengal. And the northern portion, this Tura, where is written Tura to Shillong, this is Meghalaya. And then comes Assam, portion of Assam. And then in this gap is Agartala, Tripura. And below that, south of that is Mizoram. So these are the states which had their borders with East Pakistan. It is basically a delta region, and Dhaka area, Chittagong, this is the mouth of the Ganges River. This is another map, the physical map showing the various rivers. Is a riverine country. You have on the west, you have the Ganges River. Then you have this Brahmaputra coming from the north, and Jamuna and Meghna and Padma to the east side. So it's a nightmare for a military commander. How to launch offensive operations in this area, it is very challenging. Because if you move against the grain of the ground, then you have more obstacles, more engineer effort, and the speed of the operations gets checked, and more time to complete the operations. So those were the difficulties. This is the mouth, and south is the Bay of Bengal and mouth, and Dhaka is here. And coming to the next slide, then after understanding the background, the previous wars, about the geography, about the area, the topography. It is also important to understand the personalities involved. Who were the people at the helm of affairs of our country that time? Mr. V.V. Giri was the President of India, the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and he had been elected in 1969. And Mrs. Indira Gandhi, she was the Prime Minister since 1966, when Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri died in Tashkent. She was the successor. So from 66, so she was you can say, a 5-year-old Prime Minister who had been there at the helm for 5 years. And Mr. Jagjeevan Ram was the Defense Minister. And all these people given in the slide are no longer in the world, but their role is very stellar. In the bottom left is Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was the leader of the opposition. And because there was great harmony between the government and the opposition, so the role of the opposition also mattered. And Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the popular leader of the Awami League, and whose party, Awami League in Bangladesh, had won the elections, that I'll come to subsequently. The military leadership. The army chief was General Sam Manekshaw, who was later promoted as the Field Marshal for his contributions during the success of the war. He was honored. Then Admiral S.M. Nanda, the naval chief, and the Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal. And Admiral S.M. Nanda was after retirement also. He became the Shipping Corporation Chairman, Shipping Corporation of India. And Air Chief Marshal Lal also was the chairman of Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. And though one knows more about General Field Marshal Manekshaw, but the role of Admiral Nanda and Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal was no less important. The national strategy. What was the strategy then? What was the thought process? Firstly, the scene was there was complete unity of purpose amongst the political leadership. As far as this war was concerned, this Bangladesh crisis was there, it was the complete polity was together. To quote, when a representative had to be sent to the United Nations to speak on behalf of India and to highlight the Bangladeshi problem, the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had sent Atal Bihari Vajpayee, a leader of the opposition, to fight for India's case at the United Nations. So the complete trust between the government and the opposition was there. And also after the victory, as you all know, Atal Bihari Vajpayee had hailed Indira Gandhi and compared her with goddess Durga for breaking Pakistan into two. There was complete understanding between the political and military leadership. When General Manekshaw, when Indira Gandhi had asked him to go into East Pakistan in April 71, then he had said he will go, but he requires time for preparation, about 6 months' time. So very this thing, she agreed with his observation, and she gave them 6 months' time for preparation to ramp up the production in the ordnance factories, to complete the manpower, the equipment, weapons, everything. So it was a very planned and ideal war, where complete harmony was there between the political and military leadership, and complete preparations was done. And in the meantime, when she gave 6 months to him, to the military, she used this time to mobilize international support, because Indira Gandhi didn't want the world to see India as a warmonger, but she wanted to tell about the exact problems. So there was complete coordination between the three services, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and they complemented each other, which resulted in the victory. Another point was the selection of timing of the war. The war took place in December, though it was not by choice, but opportunity grab. But we had the experience, sad experience of 65, when the war was during the monsoons in September, when the operations and the tanks, the mobility factor hit them. So we wanted to avoid summers and September, so we wanted to operate in winters, which is a campaigning time. And also during the winters, there is snow in the Himalayas, and our northern borders in the Himalayas become snowbound and the passes get blocked. And the chances of intervention and collusion between China and Pakistan is that much becomes more difficult. In the modern days, in a developing country, have got limited time for operations, whatever they want to achieve. 15 days, 1 month, because neither the economy nor the world pressure or the United Nations or superpowers will allow the war to take place, to go on and on. So we had to create and carve out another country. So our generals adopted this strategy of expanding torrents. Like rainwater, when it flows on the ground, it goes around the mounds and takes the lower ground and flows and keeps flowing and bypassing the raised grounds. The same way, Indian Army adopted the strategy of expanding torrents from all the formations which were there to bypass the enemy opposition. Leave some force to contain it and reduce it subsequently, and keep moving, thereby hastening and speeding up the operations so that you could complete it in the minimum of time. That is 13 days, 14 days time, you could reach Dhaka, because the world would not have allowed India to go on and on more than that time. So the operations had to be completed at the earliest. Mobilization I've already discussed, and you require a strong ally. Like any human being requires a mentor to guide a person. The same way a country also requires a strong ally. And USSR, erstwhile, the predecessor of Russia, was a very staunch ally of India. And Indira Gandhi knew that Pakistan was very close to USA and China. And to keep them at arm's length, she went into a friendship treaty of 20 years, in which there was a clause of either of the countries, if they are attacked, the other country would come to its assistance. So this clause in that treaty kept USA and China from to prevent them from doing any mischief and interfering. So a lot of pressure was there by USA when they sent a 7th Fleet into the Bay of Bengal and asking for cessation of hostilities and for a ceasefire. But India had to liberate, and then only ceasefire was to declare. So this was the national strategy, and well thought out by the political and the national leadership. And it was a well-oiled machine which was fighting there. These are the two gentlemen, very important people who helped India during that time. Mr. Alexei Kosygin, who was a prime minister, and he was a prime minister of, and during the war, he was a prime minister. And Mr. Leonid Brezhnev, initially the general secretary of the CPSU, and who later on became the president. He was there for 18 years. They were very staunch and reliable allies of India, and who helped us. And when 7th Fleet came into the Bay of Bengal, they also had moved their navy into the Bay of Bengal. And whichever motions were passed in the Security Council for ceasefire, they used their vetoes on number of occasions. And also, we cannot forget the legendary foreign minister, the longest serving foreign secretary of any country, Mr. Andrei Gromyko, who was there for about 40 years. He played a major role in the United Nations and blocking all the resolutions. We have to be grateful to those people. Without the help, it would have been very difficult to keep those two countries away. What were the circumstances which led to the war? As you know, that initially Jinnah was there. They were overthrown and there was dictatorship right from independence of Pakistan. There were no elections. In 50s, 60s, there were no elections. And Ayub Khan ruled Pakistan for a long time. And he was relieved in 1969. And elections were announced. First ever elections were announced in 1970. Now, what happened in the elections? East Pakistan, because of its population, had more number of seats to the National Assembly as compared to West Pakistan. And there was only one single party in East Pakistan, Mujibur Rahman's Awami League. It got about 160, plus some women candidates. They got about 180 seats, a very clear majority in a house of 300. So technically and logically, Mujibur Rahman should have been called to form the government, and he should have been the prime minister of the country. However, and whereas in the West Pakistan, they had less number of seats, and also they were fragmented. There were 4 or 5 parties. The major parties were the Muslim League and the Pakistan People's Party of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. They were there. So the biggest party was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's party, which got only 80 seats as compared to 160 seats. But they were dragging the feet, and they could not digest the fact a Bengali would be a prime minister of Pakistan, because Pakistan politics has been dominated by the people staying in West Pakistan, the Baluchs, the Pathans, the Punjabis, and Northwest Frontier Province, all those people. And then mass protests took place, and there was a lot of frustration amongst the Bengalis that they were not being handed over the power. And Yahya Khan, who was the president, he ordered a crackdown and mass protest, and large number of refugees came into India. Over 1 crore, 10 million, over 10 million refugees came into it. And it was adversely affected our economy. Also, whenever such large number of people come, there is a chance that some of them may not go back also. That fear was also on India's mind. So there was a big colossal problem, a drain on the economy, and the demographic challenges to the government. Mukti Bahani was also formed during this time. They were the people of Bengali people of East Pakistan who were in the Pakistan Army, their police forces, the CPOs, and some civilians who got arms. They formed a guerrilla force, which was known as the Mukti Bahani, which was also supported by India and trained by India also. This was to assist. And the operations of Indian Army would have been very difficult and more challenging if Mukti Bahani's assistance was not there. Their help in guidance, your information, intelligence gathering about the Pakistanis, because they were the local people, and they gave the best of intelligence to the advancing Indian army, and the guidance and everything, assistance was given. That assisted Indian Army's job. And Indira Gandhi and our country had full support for the independence for the people of East Pakistan and their democratic aspirations, because it was a humanitarian crisis and also it was subversion of democracy. So our country has always supported all such movements in Africa, Central Asia. So always, also because we have suffered ourselves for so many years, so we decided to assist the Bangla people. These are some few images of the people who came from Bangladesh, refugees. Over 1 lakh. A population of Uttarakhand. The population of Uttarakhand is about slightly over 1 crore. Imagine a population, the complete population of Uttarakhand moving to another area. That was the crisis. These are another image, how the people trooped into India and we welcomed them and we established camps and looked after. These are few images of the Mukti Bahani, the local Bengalis, the deserters, police deserters, army deserters who were in the army, police, to fight the Pakistani army and also assisted the Indian army to a great extent. Operations in the Eastern Front. Eastern Front means Bangladesh. Indo Pak War was there. Basically, the war was primarily to liberate Bangladesh. And the national strategy was to have a defensive posture on the Western Front, because many units and formations had been pulled out from the Western theater and moved to Eastern theater for the main task. The focus was on Bangladesh. So initially we go through this operations which took place on the Eastern Front. In March 71, Tikka Khan cracked down and Mujir Rahman was arrested also in March 71 and taken to West Pakistan and put into prison. Instead of making him the prime minister, he was put into prison. And Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, hobnobbing with Yahya Khan, continued to be the prime minister. And in exile, the people who were there, they declared independence of Bangladesh also in March 71. Then it was in April, Indira Gandhi had ordered General Manekshaw to go into East Pakistan, and after that gave him 6 months time to prepare and also mobilize the international opinion. On 3rd of December 71, the Pakistani Air Force, today is also 3rd December, exactly 50 years ago on 3rd of December, Pakistani Air Force launched a surprise preemptive strike on many airfields in northwestern India. This was an opportunity which we grabbed because we were looking for an opportunity to start the war, because we didn't want to be seen as a warmonger, and we reacted immediately. A national emergency was declared by the government and Indian army formations crossed the border in East Pakistan. A swift 3-pronged assault and a close air support, the army converged on Dhaka. On 15 December, Indian army encircled Dhaka and issued an ultimatum to surrender in 30 minutes time. Initially, he said it will be over my dead body, but on 16th, he agreed to sign the surrender document. This is the map of Bangladesh with the various formations and from where all they moved in. This is Bangladesh in the center, West Bengal to the west, and north is Meghalaya, and to the east is Tripura and Mizoram and Assam, that side. And there were 3 corps utilized. One was from the western side was the 2 corps. 2 corps actually was a newly raised corps. It was just raised few months before the 71 war. It had the 4th Division and 9th Division, and the corps commander was General T.N. Rana, who later on became the army chief. And he was also the brigade commander of 114 Brigade, Chushul Brigade in 1962 war, where he was conferred with the MVC. Then to the northwest was the 33 Corps, 20 Div and 71 Brigade. This was being commanded by General Thapan. 101 Bomb Zone from the north, from Meghalaya side, and from the east, the heaviest was the 4 Corps, consisting of 3 divisions, more troops. The biggest thrust was from this side, from Tripura side. This was commanded by General Sagat Singh, who is now a legend in the Indian Army because of the role which he played. And this is Dhaka in the center, and to the north is Tangail. Later on, I will talk about it. This is the place where the first airborne landings was conducted, the biggest airborne landing after Second World War. These are the parachutes and the troops of the 2 para battalion was used in this, employed in this. The role of this 2 para was basically twofold. One was they were dropped at Tangail area. Tangail is the name of the place. It goes synonymous with the para landing. And there was a brigade at Memon Singh area north of that, a Pakistani brigade, which was withdrawing towards Dhaka to reinforce the garrison for the final fight. So it was dropped there to block this brigade. And also this battalion would have helped in the further tightening of the noose and the encirclement of Dhaka from the north, because from the west we had the 2 Corps, from the east we had the 4 Corps, and this was to put pressure on the Pakistanis to surrender at the earliest, so that our operations are completed in time. And so both these objectives of this brigade was achieved. And when I was in NDA, I was a divisional cadet captain, and my divisional officer was Captain Nirbhay Sharma. And Captain Nirbhay Sharma had taken part in this operation, Tangail operation. Later on, Nirbhay Sharma became a Lieutenant General, and he was member of the UPSC and governor of Arunachal and Mizoram. That was my connection with Tangail. Then General Niazi, who was the overall commander of Pakistani forces, and his deputy, they surrendered without offering any resistance. A very humiliating moment for any army to surrender, unconditional surrender. And Pakistan ultimately called for unilateral ceasefire and surrendered its entire military to the Indian Army. And on 16 December 71, the instrument was signed and a new nation was born. The Indian Army took Pakistan Army to its knees and took 93,000 prisoners, which stayed in India for about 4 months. And then after the Shimla Accord, they were returned to the country, because that is also unnecessary expenditure, feeding on 1 lakh people. And Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who was in prison in Pakistan, he was released by Pakistan, and he came back and became the first Prime Minister of Bangladesh. And the present Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina Wajid, is a daughter of Mujibur Rahman. He was a very popular leader, and his party was very popular, and still today it is in power. Though in between, there were other governments and other dictators also. And now, these days, in this year, we are celebrating across India the 50th anniversary, and army units, all army units and formations all over the country, they are visiting all Gallantry Award winners, visiting their homes and honoring them and their family members. This is an iconic picture of the surrender ceremony. You see in the photograph seated down below is the Sikh gentleman who is General Jagjit Singh Arora, the GOCNC Eastern Command. And with him is signing General A.K. Niazi, who's signing, the one in the khaki dress. The uniform of theirs is khaki, Pakistan Army. And to the right, if you see standing, is General Jacob. He was the Chief of Staff in the Eastern Command, the number 2, the deputy of General Arora, who played a major role in the success of the Bangladesh liberation. Then you have Admiral Krishnan, who was the admiral in charge of the complete fleet in the eastern sector in the Bay of Bengal. Then he is Admiral Diwan, Air Marshal Diwan, who was the air officer in command, chief of Eastern Command at Shillong, which is there. Complete operations in Bangladesh, air operations was commanded under his command. And here, and this olive green next to him, between General Jacob and Admiral Diwan, is General Sagat Singh, the GOC 4 Corps, who was the main hero of the land operations in Bangladesh. Though this war is also known as the liberation of Bangladesh, and the overall strategy was to have a holding operation in the east, in the west, and our focus was on Bangladesh. But very tough fighting took place on the Western Front also, because to the world, we never wanted to be seen as an aggressor. We didn't want to go for any major offensive in West Pakistan. And moreover, our many formations and units had been moved from Western Front to the Eastern Front for the Bangladesh operations. But you will be surprised to know that out of the 4 Paramveer Chakras which were awarded during the war, only 1 Paramveer Chakra of last night, Albert Eka, was given for Bangladesh operations, whereas all remaining 3 were for Arun Khetrapal in Shakargarh, and Major Hoshiar Singh in Shakargarh, and Nirmaljeet Sekho in Srinagar. They were all on the Western Front. So that cannot undermine the importance of operation and the sacrifices and the success of the Western Command also. The Western Command was, the GOCNC was General Kandith, and the Southern Command was General Babur. Fierce battles were fought in Cham, which had been a weak area for us due to the topography, because of the Manohar, Tavi, and our areas that used to become untenable, not very defensible. Kargil, Naya Chor, Chicken Neck. And the main focus of Pakistan was basically Kashmir, because it wanted to go for the jugular. It wanted to drive a wedge between Pathankot and Jammu and cut out this national highway, so that the pressure is applied on the Indian Army operations in Bangladesh, so that perforce to save Kashmir, Indian forces will be removed from Bangladesh, and those operations will be delayed, and then some ceasefire, and operations will remain incomplete. But the Pakistani designs did not happen. They had moved the offensive corps, the 1 corps, which consists of the 15-day and 88-day are deployed in the area, but 1 corps was the main, and R1 corps. And we also suspected, because being a sensitive area, the Indian Army offensive 1 corps, because 2 corps was just raised and it was in Bangladesh. So 1 corps was in Samha area. Indian Army anticipated mischief by Pakistan from the Shakargarh Bulge. And so their 1 corps and our 1 corps were in front of each other in the same sector, in the Sialkot sector. The major battles were in the Battle of Basantar, where in the Battle of Jarwal, where we had established a bridgehead across the Basanta River. 3 grenadiers was there, Major Hoshiar Singh, and he was also awarded the Paramveer Chakra. So he fought very valiantly, and one of his, due to arty shelling, one of his MMGs was damaged. So he took on the MMG himself and started firing on the enemy, and he held on to the defenses, a bridgehead which had been established. So 3 grenadiers played a very major role, and Major Hoshiar Singh's contribution. And my connection with Major Hoshiar Singh is this: when I was in the Indian Military Academy as a cadet, we have various companies known by various names like Sangro Company, Karen Company, Singhad Company. So I was in Singhad Company, and he was my company commander. So I have, as a cadet, I have stayed with him for about a year in Singhad Company, a Paramveer Chakra recipient. So I am very honored to serve and be trained as a cadet under a PVC awardee. And he hails from, he retired as a colonel, he's no more, he's passed away, and he hailed from Rohtak. He was a Jat from Rohtak area. The other heroic deed was of Second Lieutenant Arun Khetrapal. He passed out from NDA, IMA in June, and in December, he went to war. Within 6 months, he had just 6 months service, hardly 60 years. He was the 4th generation officer of his great-grandfather was in the army. Then his grandfather was in the army. His father, Brigadier Khetrapal, was also in the army, a sapper officer. And he was also, to protect the bridgehead, he also had taken the troop, and he was commanding a troop. He was a junior officer, 2nd lieutenant, and there was a SOS from a squadron commander that he's been surrounded by enemy. Then overhearing on the radio set, he voluntarily rushed to that area, and on the way he was met with resistance where he knocked down 1 or 2 tanks. And then after reaching that area, again he knocked down 2 more tanks. Total 4 tanks he knocked out. And then his tank was hit and he was in flames. And then his squadron 2IC had asked him to vacate and abandon his tank to save himself. He refused. He said, there's 1 more tank, I am taking it on. But in the meantime, his tank was hit and he attained martyrdom there. A just 20 years old young boy who had just 6 months service, he gave the life for his country after destroying 4 tanks. That was Arun Khetrapal and the bravery of Battle of Basantar. You can call it Sialkot sector, Shakargarh sector, Shakargarh Bulge, Basantar, or Badapint. This is also known as the Battle of Badapint. The next was the Battle of Longewala. I'll not talk much about this because you have seen in border movie how Sunny Deol, this has been, movie has been made on this Battle of Longewala, the same on same setting where Major Kuldeep Singh Chandpuri, who was the company commander who got a MVC, his role has been played by Sunny Deol. I'm very sure most of you must have seen that movie. And here, the point which comes to my mind is the inter-services cooperation, where the Air Force, the very concept of establishing NDA on the lines of West Point was that initially 3 years, all 3 services officers should be trained together. So a company commander of the army, if he, in case his crisis, he was surrounded by tanks, about 100 odd tanks, he was surrounded, a small company post with 2 RCL guns. With his RCL guns, he held them for the night. And in the morning, he called up his friend, his coursemate, and he said, you wait till morning. And when Jackie Shroff came, his hunters came, and that became the graveyard of all those armored brigade. And that armored brigade, which was there, the commanders and all the CEOs were sacked because 1 infantry battalion, a company, held back the complete offensive. So though you see, though on the Western side, it was a holding role, a defensive role, but still very hard fought battles were fought on the Western side too. Moreover, the opportunity which General Sagat Singh got because it was offensive operations, that opportunity was denied to many commanders of the West because there were no offensive plans. So in case there were offensive plans, I'm sure General Baboor and other div commanders and General Candid and the division commanders would have performed marvelously. Those were the operations in the Western and role of the Indian Navy. It was an inter-services effort. The Navy achieved effective blockade of East Pakistan and a partial blockade of Pakistan. Aircraft carrier Vikrant, which would have been vulnerable to the Arabian Sea, was brought to the Bay of Bengal, and the aircrafts of Vikrant also complemented the efforts of the Air Force in engaging targets in Bangladesh operations. There are about 20 odd aircrafts on INS Vikrant, and they also helped in the land battle in Bangladesh. They were in the Bay of Bengal. And PNS Ghazi, Pakistan ship, submarine, which was sent specially to look for Vikrant because it is a slow moving, very big ship, or aircraft carrier, but it fell into his own trap. Some say it was sunk by INS Rajput. Some say it was landed into his own minefield, or some explosion took place. Pakistanis have got a different version, but that submarine was sunk. Ghazi, which was sent for Vikrant, and our Vikrant was safe, and it supported the operations, the blockade and the ground operations. Then the daring your Operation Trident was launched by Indian Navy, where 3 missile boats with some support ships, they were launched on Karachi Harbor from the west in the Arabian Sea. And when they landed, Commander Baburu Khan Yadav, he was a commander of the Karachi Strike Force, and he was awarded, and he had 3 missile boat commanders, and he was awarded. The missile boat commanders were lieutenant commanders. They were given V Chakra, and he got the MVC for this operation. This operation, when they struck with the missiles, the Karachi harbor, they destroyed about 2 ships, damaged another one, then sunk another merchant ship, and created complete havoc on Karachi harbor. Their oil storage drums were put on fire, which raged for days, and foreign international firefighters were brought to extinguish the fire. And when the first missiles hit, the Pakistanis thought it was an air attack. The sirens went off. Then they realized it was not an air attack. They never imagined that missile boats, these which had come from Russian missile boats, and they were effective, and they had cut out. This happened on the night 4th and 5th. So much was the success of this operation that Navy celebrates its Navy Day on 4th of October to celebrate and commemorate this operation. And aircraft of INS Vikrant assisted the IF in engaging targets in East Pakistan. INS Kukri, a frigate in the Western Arabian Sea, our own ship, was sunk by a Pakistani submarine off the coast of Diu in the west. Captain M.N. Malla was conferred the MVC. As per the highest traditions of the Navy, if a ship is sunk, the captain should be the last person to vacate the ship. And Captain M.N. Malla, who was the captain of Kukri, he made sure that everybody, maximum people evacuated the ship, but few people were left. So, and the ship was about to be submerged. He decided to stay on the ship. Though as a captain, he could have gone on some lifeboat. He sat on his captain's chair on the deck, and he sank with the ship. In the highest traditions of the Indian Army and the Indian Navy, which we inherited from the British Navy also, the captain goes down with the ship. we lived up to that tradition. He was also awarded the MVC, and his daughter. Just a point like to share, 2 points here. We also got a Vikrant Connect with Amity, because our Admiral Kocher, who was in the Chief of Staff here at the Noida campus, he also commanded INS Vikrant, but much later after the war. He commanded INS Vikrant, the aircraft carrier 92 to 94, which is, we should feel proud of that. And Captain Malla's daughter, Amita Malla Vatal, she was the principal of Springdale School for a long time, a very famous principal, very popular principal, and very visible principal. Amita Vatal, she is daughter of Captain M.N. Malla, and she worked with Springdales for a long time. Then now she is with the DLF group in the education, and she's managing the education there. Role of the Air Force, basically it was defense of the Indian skies against the intruding Pakistani aircrafts, which they fulfilled credibly. And we achieved, our Air Force helped in achieving a favorable air situation in East Pakistan, which facilitated the complete unhindered operations by the Indian ground forces. So there was, because in a few days' time, they knocked off the Pakistan, whatever was, because the Pakistani had very skewed deployment of the Air Force. The bulk of it was in West Pakistan, and very little assets were given to Bangladesh. And whatever they were destroyed by Indian Air Force and our aircraft carriers, aircrafts in a very short time, in the opening days of the war only. So our ground forces got complete freedom of movement. Then interdiction sorties were launched by our Air Force going into Pakistan and degrading and destroying their enemy strategic installations, like oil and Sui gas depots. And also they helped in the largest airborne operation since World War II by 2 para at Tangel. And in Srinagar, in the air battle of Srinagar, flying officer NS Seko, Nirmalji Singh Seko, was his father was also in the Air Force, and he was deployed there in the valley. And there was 6 Sabre aircrafts of Pakistan had come and attacked Srinagar airfield. And when the attack is on, it's very difficult to take off, because you are on the ground, you're likely to get damaged. But despite that fact, when the aircrafts came and attacked, they started strafing and started dropping bombs. Nirmalji Singh Seko, under fire, he took off his distance. He shot few sabers, and then and they distracted the attention of the Sabre aircrafts who were attacking the airfield, which was trying to damage the airfield. And he distracted them and disturbed them, preventing them to carry further damage. And also then he made maneuvers at treetop level, so that there were 4 aircraft chasing them. In that risky flying, he crashed on the ground. He was not shot. His plane crashed on the ground when he was dissuading, attracting the fighters towards himself and trying to save, and he was just flying a Nat aircraft. And for his bravery and valor and his exceptional devotion to duty, he was conferred with the Paramvir Chakra, the only Paramvir Chakra which Air Force has got. So there were 4 Paramvir Chakras. One was with Nirmalji Singh Seko, the other one was to Arun Khetrapal, the third one was to Major Hoshiar Singh, all in the Western Front, and one was to, in the opening days of the war, and third in the Battle of Hilli, it was awarded to Lance Naik Albert Eka of Brigade of Guards. And he was just 28 years old. He was a last night, the first rank after a Sipahi, and he was in the assaulting company, and he in the initial assault he got injured, and he silenced an LMG. After that, when the objective was quite deep, and when he went further ahead, killing people on the way, then they encountered a double-storied building, which he scaled the walls and then destroyed the MMG, which was holding back that one. That is also known as the Battle of Ganga Sagar, Battle of Hilli or Ganga Sagar. And his company commander was Colonel Ashok Tara. And Colonel Ashok Tara also is personally known to me. We have served together, and he was awarded the Veer Chakra. And he resides in Noida. And I had requested him to join this lecture and as a guest for some time, but he was busy, not available due to his preoccupation. He could not join. And later on, after the Battle of Ganga Sagar, where he got his Veer Chakra, Colonel Tara was tasked to go to the presidential house where they were being there and held as captive. Mujibur Rahman's family. So he went there and alone, and he saved the family. Till today, he's honored by the Bangladesh government, and he's personally known to Sheikh Hasina Wajid, and they call him for whenever there's a function in Bangladesh. That was Colonel Ashok Tara, Veer Chakra of Guards, and Albert Eka. He was from Jharkhand. What were the important outcomes of the war? Firstly, the two-nation theory was demolished. Two-nation theory was like Jinnah's theory was that both communities cannot stay together. They require a separate nation. So, but one community also could not stay together. So the theory was demolished. Then India was seen as supporting a humanitarian cause. There was not a whimper also in the world. A country has been liberated, like how the mess USA has caused in Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan. India and Bangladesh liberation was a clean surgical action without leaving any telltale sign, and we, without any selfish interest, we did not stay back there. We didn't become the overlords, liberated the country and left them to their own, and like good neighbors. And there was excellent coordination between the government and the armed forces. The training, equipping, and employment of Mukti Bahani was very important. Without that, the success would have been very much difficult for the Indian Army. And we took this 93 prisoners of war in unconditional ceasing. And then the Shillong Accord was between Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Indira Gandhi was there, with by which we decided to settle Kashmir as a bilateral issue and not to raise in international forums. Bilaterally resolve karna hai. And also certain areas we were allowed to retain. Like in some in Kargil and all, we retain. Like I know I have served there in Nubra Valley, in Turtuk area, we are still retaining the area from in the Diskit Valley, Nubra up to Turtuk, which was with Pakistan. And Colonel Rinchin was there of Ladakh Scouts along with the Gorkha company. They captured 10-15 kilometers ahead, which we are still retaining. And I was lucky to serve there. So we are retaining that area. And the threat to the Siliguri corridor, you must have heard about this Chumbi Valley of Tibet and the wedge which is there. And it is just 20 kilometers wide. And India's worry has always been like an collusive scenario between Pakistan, East Pakistan and China. They can cut us off. And all our 7 sisters will be cut off from us. So now with a much friendlier government, instead of East Pakistan, now we have got Bangladesh, so things are better. So Siliguri corridor, it is about 20 kilometers wide near Siliguri, and Bangladesh border became peaceful. Peaceful means there was no regular army required. It was a normal border. So the BSF deployment is there, and it releases that army for other jobs. These were the Paramvir awardees about which I have already spoken. On the top left is Albert Eka, Lance Naik Albert Eka from Guards. Nirmaljeet Sekho, the flying officer, and Major Hoshyar Singh, who was my company commander in IMA, and Khetrapal, Lieutenant Colonel, Second Lieutenant Khetrapal, the fourth generation officer who laid down his life. These four people, and we are honored, and we pay a tribute and homage to these heroes and many more. They are the 6 PVCs have come later on, like Kargil had 4, your Siachen had 1, Oppa 1 had 1, 6. So if you reduce 6 out of 21 total PVC, there are only 15 PVCs then during 71. And 51 minus these 4, there were 11. At the time when this operation, this complete Indo-Pak took place, there were 11 Paramvir Chaks. Because you must understand all these things in perspective. So there were 11 PVCs, and when these 4 were awarded, it became 15. And then subsequent operations in Siachen and Kargil and Oppavan, 6 more were added. So total in say 2 generations in a 75 years period, there are only 21 Paramvir Chaks, 1 to the Air Force and remaining 20 to the Army, and so far none to the Navy. This is the epitaph which I always liked and which impressed me was the epitaph. I happened to serve in Nagaland for about 7 years in different stints, 3 stints, total 7 years. It is a Second World War cemetery, the Battle of Tennis Court. When you go home, tell them of us, and for your tomorrow, we gave our today. Very touching. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. These are the people, those 4,000 people who died for our country. Some got gallantry awards, some did not. But all of them, and many of them participated, who came back alive also. So our tribute and respects to all of them who came back alive, who became injured, who lost their limbs and everything, just for our liberty, to keep our country safe. Jai Hind, and I have finished in this talk and my basic information, because you are all the design for the ACC cadets. So basic things, because you may not have been aware of what all happened, because when we were born, Second World War was about 20 years before us, but still we didn't know about Second World War. And now in your case, you are just 13, 14, 15 years old. So this war took place 40 years, 35 years before you. So that much less you would have been knowing. But it is a duty, like happens in all the good countries. We must remember our dead. We must remember our soldiers and all those who keep us safe. Thank you, sir. Any questions I would like to take on,
before we open to question, Colonel Butt,
sir.
It was an amazing exposition. It touched my heart, mind, and soul. The way you described the sacrifice made by our service officers, the personnel, the other ranks, the personnel in the other rank, everyone, gave their best, and we could win the war in such a short time. In spite of all the geopolitical scenarios around, but still our forces, they showed their mettle in this Indo Pak War. And you are an experienced veteran in the army, and you have seen many wars. You have operated in many battlefronts. So our appreciation that speaking from a soldier like you, it means a lot to our students and also the children who are listening to this program. You should be proud about your country, about our soldiers, the Indian Army, Navy, Air Force officers, men, and their families who are making so much sacrifice for the nation. This is to reinforce that prestige of uniform, the Army, Navy, Air Force, You must all enjoy. Some of you will be joining armed forces. Some of you will be joining the defense establishments to make defense technologies and so on. So that is why this celebration is just not only celebration, it's a salutation to those people who fought this war. And also remember with gratitude all the people who contributed to the victory in the war. And you must know this at this young age so that you will develop that patriotism, the national fervor. Everything is vital for India to become a superpower. India to get a national security, UN National Security Council seat. And also India to become a superpower. So all this, it requires you, your commitment, devotion, sacrifice, like the soldiers have done this sacrifice to win a war. We have to win this war to make our country the developed nation and also the superpower in the world. So that with the idea of creating a new world order, which will be seen by good health, happiness, peace, prosperity, sarve bhavantu sukhinaha for everyone. So this is what is the purpose of this lecture given by Colonel Butt. But when you are narrating the whole historical perspectives, how the joint services operations really helped to achieve this, the objective of the war, which we won, because all the Army, Navy, Air Force, they all worked together as a combined defense force. So that was the reason for the victory as well. And also the commitment of people. Everybody was giving their best in any form, the motivation to the soldiers who were in the battlefront and to their families. So this is what is required. We are all one, whether you are in uniform or not in uniform, that you are a citizen of India. So that you must have, keep the nation always the foremost in your mind. The children, the students who are listening to this, nation comes first for everyone, not just only people in uniform. For every one of us, the nation first, and all other things are at the back. So if you do that, then the country will become a superpower. So Colonel Butt, once again, compliments to you, the way you put forth the historical perspectives of this war in the right way, and also highlighting the services given by the armed forces personnel and the families. Thank you so much. Now I would like to listen from General Gadiok before we open to the children to ask some interactive questions. General Gadiok, would you like to make anything, or first we will open to the children and then you can give concluding remarks?
Yes, sir. Because I've got a very important call coming through, so I'll just take 1 minute.
Okay, please.
And then I'd take leave. I just want to say, sir, that the agreement, actually everyone should know, the children must know that 16th it finished the war, and the agreement then converted the ceasefire line on 17th of December into the line of actual control. It's a lovely movie which all the children must see, the LOC. I've seen it 24 times with my son. And I don't mind seeing it again and again because this is some movie which moves your heart and soul. So I suggest all the children must see it to see as to what kind of sacrifice is made by a soldier for his country. Neither side shall seek to alter the LOC unilaterally, irrespective of mutual differences. That is known and legal interpretations. And this identification of a new ceasefire line, that is by both India and Pakistan, has been argued by India as well as by Pakistan and the United Nations, that is by the UNMOG, Military Observer Group. So please remember, the agreement has been signed by the Foreign Minister, that is Government of Bangladesh, Minister of External Affairs of India, and the Minister of State for Defense and Foreign Affairs of the Government of Pakistan. We must fight for our sovereignty, territorial integrity, which I think the present government is doing an extremely good job. Thank you very much. God bless. Jai Hind, Jai Hindustan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Colonel Butt, there are one question I saw that. Would you like to look at those questions? 2, 3 questions are there. Why Pakistan Army started killing his own Bengali innocent citizens? This is a question from Mr. Keshav Krishna. Why Pakistan Army started killing his own Bengali innocent citizens?
I've got your question. The question is why Pakistan Army started killing its own Bengali innocent citizens. See, the first point which I had said, that when Pakistan became independent, it was divided into two wings, the western and the eastern wings, and they were separated by 1,000 kilometers. There was a cultural divide. There were people, Bengali speaking people with Bengali habits and Bengali language, everything was Bengali. Whereas their people were Pathans, they were Pakhtuns, they were Punjabis and others. So that is a different, it was basically racial discrimination. They did not accept Bengalis who got the majority to rule over them. That was the reason. The divide may be a fault line of the partition, because if you have one country in two areas, there can be differences between those two areas, and if they are as compared to areas which are all contiguous to each other. I hope I have answered your question. Anything you like to add, sir?
I think it's okay. Now, any other, can you ask the
Any other questions, sir?
students?
Any other questions you can, sir?
Our own Amity Cadet Corps people, we would like to see some of them. Would you like to, IT department, can you just take some of them on the panel and then give them the rights to be activating their cameras and asking questions?
Yes, sir. If they raise their hand, so I'll allow to speak.
So just please raise your hand. There's a symbol, raise your hand. Yeah, there is somebody has raised it. Can you just give them the rights to address and ask their clarification, comments, response, and their own reflection?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I'm a student of Amity International School, Sector 46, Gurugram. And first of all, I would like to thank you, sir, and Colonel Sir and Lieutenant General Sir for their amazing words and for the detailed insight that they gave us into the actual working of the 1971 war. I am actually really proud and really happy that these war efforts of all the people who participated in the 1971 war are being recognized now, because my grandfather was a wing commander in that war, and he was part of the Canberra bomber squad, and they had gone on several sorties to drop bombs over Pakistan and Bangladesh, and I love to hear all his war stories. And today it was like an amazing experience to actually understand the intricate working of every little thing that happened in the war, every little operation. And it was absolutely amazing to hear that their efforts, all of these war heroes are being recognized. And at the end, I can just say that thank you so much, Amity, and thank you so much, sir, for everything and for all the efforts that you did. And I can say that I am extremely proud, an extremely proud Indian and an extremely proud granddaughter of a war hero. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, we are proud, Anuba Mathur, and we are also proud to have such children in our schools, Amity International Schools, and also people who hail from such noble families who are part of the armed forces. And our salutation to your grandfather, and convey our the salutations, respects, pranams to your grandfather. And children, I would like to say that Amity has taken many initiatives under the leadership of Honorable Founder President, that we have Amity Cadet Corps. You may be aware that like National Cadet Corps, we have Amity Cadet Corps. Colonel Bhatt, would you like to elaborate on that Cadet Corps, because you look after this? Just can you mention what all activities you have been doing, Colonel Prakash Bhatt?
Sure. So Amity Cadet Corps is the brainchild of the founder president, and it has been run on the lines of the National Cadet Corps. And the training, it is meant for class 9 children. And unfortunately, for the last 1 or 2 years, due to the COVID pandemic, we could not conduct the training as we wanted. And the training is designed on the junior division of the NCC. And there are about 90 periods, which we call the institutional training. So we have got instructors, the ex-army JCOs are there. They carry out the training. They're embedded in all schools. and they carry out the training, the drill, the other lectures, shooting, firing. And at the end of the year, they have a camp also, annual training camp of 6 days, where all cadets go to Manesar and the salubrious environment of the Green Valley, Amity Education Valley, and they stay in tentage and have community living. And they have adventure training, your paragliding, your zorbing, and they have a Kasam parade also, where there's a parade which they learn in about 3 days, and then they conduct a parade, the cadets, and they are their own commanders, the parade commander and everybody. And then there's a culminates with a dog show, and they stay in tentage in under canvas, and they do own, and community washrooms are there. So they learn that type of life away from their parents, independent, maybe for the first time when they come collectively as a class. And that is a good training. And whatever I have seen in the last 3 years, 4 years I have been here, the children look forward for this camp, and they really enjoy the camp, and they would like the camp to go on and not like to go back also at the end of this training, sir.
Thank you so much, Colonel
Sir.
Butt. Why I asked him to speak about this, because this is a very new initiative. Like the NCC, we have ACC, and you have opportunity. All of you who are listening to this program, you have an opportunity to come to Amity, join us at the ACC, and participate in this excitement, which Colonel Butt was mentioning, that all children who attend there, they don't want to go back home. They want to spend more time here with the ACC. So we also have military college, Amity Military College for men and women. Why don't you say a few words about this, Colonel Butt?
Those girls who have done their class 12 and they aspire to join the armed forces, and they want to select armed forces as a career. So for that, they require a graduate degree. But now NDA has also opened up recently, and now you can go after class 12th also. But AIMC is basically for those girl students who want to adopt army as a career. So side by side, along with the BA studies or BSc studies, we have got certain add-ons, like extra credits are there. Like we train them in your physical training, your personality development, and military orientation. So there are 3 subjects. And every week there are periods where they carry out shooting, they are doing drill, and they become quite smart within this period. So we have got first semester, second semester, and third semester, and they are taking quite some interest, and this is helpful for them to crack the CDS also. Assistance is given in preparation for CDS and also for SSB also. Once you get selected for CDS, then you have to go for the SSB. And communication skills.
How many? We have given more than 360 officers to the Army, Navy, Air Force through our Amity SSB Academy, 360 officers. Yes. So you can be one of them who are aspirant to join the armed forces. Please join our SSB Academy. We will groom how you have to face Service Selection Board. SSB means Service Selection Board. They have about 16 boards, like in Allahabad, Bhopal, and Bangalore. Then we have in Dehradun. And so all these places, there are 16 of them for Army, Navy, Air Force intake. So we will groom you in our Amity SSB Academy, and how to be physically, mentally, how to answer your, respond to the stimuli which are given to the people there in your 6 days of evaluation in SSB. So we will groom you and manifest already you have the leadership potential. We will help you to manifest them when you are interacting with all these interviewing officers, group testing officer, the technical officer, or the psychologist. So we will help you. Good. Now there is another question he wants to ask. Chaitanya, can you unmute the mic and speak? Chaitanya, just unmute. Chaitanya Bal.
Hello.
Yes, Chaitanya, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, I had a question. So my question was that did we have a contingency plan just if we fail to liberate
Just
Bangladesh?
introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. So my name is Chaitanya Bahel. I study in class 9th of Amity International School, Saket.
Very good.
And I was very happy to attend the session. I really like listening to all the stories and all the battles, and it was very inspirational listening to the stories of valor of people, and it inspired me to think and become like them as well, and to put my nation before me.
Yeah, tell you a question now.
Yes, sir. So my question was that was there any contingency plan to liberate Bangladesh if our first method of attack or first method of liberation had failed?
Colonel Butt.
Yes, sir. Firstly, this 1971 war, it was a very classical war which took place, copybook style. All the right things were done, and all various contingencies which could have occurred were anticipated also. Like I told you, like Chinese interference. So this operation, the war was planned for winters so that there couldn't be any interference from the Chinese, because one factor we could have affected us were the Chinese. The other was the USA and some European countries, because France and UK also were not very much towards us, because they were part of the Western bloc, Pakistan. The other thing was we had pulled out all the troops from the Western side, because our focus was on the Eastern side. And we were on a defensive posture on the Western side. But as I mentioned later, that though the liberation war takes the main credit and the main publicity, but the way the people fought and the three PVCs which were given were in the West and not in the East. How easy it was in the East. Third point, Bangladesh people were already up in arms against Pakistan. Because they were being suppressed, their democratic aspirations, because they had got the majority in the parliament, the National Assembly, they were not. So people were all against Pakistan. Like in other countries, if you go into side Pakistan, then things may not be easy for India. But if you're going to a friendly countries where you are trying to help them, so you get the support of all the people, all the civilian population. Then they also armed resistance group Mukti Bahani, which was prepared. They were equipped and given assistance to help them. And they were separated, both the wings were separated. So over land flights, which happen in peacetime, were not permitted during war. So it becomes very difficult for Pakistan to have assisted. If China cannot help, the Pakistan, the Western wing was the only place from where the help could have come. The overflights over India was not possible, and the long route down the peninsula India and was very long time consuming. And our Navy did a wonderful job by imposing a complete blockade of East Pakistan. We were dominating that area. Because they neglected that area, it was like Pakistan army in Bangladesh was like an occupation army, hardly 20-25,000. Mostly the soldiers were of West Pakistan citizens. They did not gel with the local people. So, and those people, we would have definitely defeated them. And we had factored all these contingencies. Possibly we could have taken more time. Then it was a Sai warfare, where even General Manekshaw dropped leaflets over Dhaka on 15th, 14th. This is part of the psychological operations. He surrendered, you are surrounded from all sides. The para drop which took place to tighten the noose, because if the ground operations are taking more time, you interject by some force by the vertical envelopment which took place. So could have taken, but you can't say it could not have. Things can always go wrong. And like the 7th Fleet was there, that contingency was there, America would have interfered. But we had also catered for that. We had signed the treaty with Russia. And the Russian Navy also was present. They had sent from Vladivostok some vessels, which are like countervailing force on those this thing. So all these precautions are, the defeat was certain in Bangladesh because the people were not there, and the people were with us. The Mukti Bahini was with us. Everybody was with us. Only thing, and Pakistani army was demoralized, cut off from the mainland, the West Pakistan. They had no assistance whatsoever. Who could have taken, if we would have, they would have stuck and fought, and if we had decided to take them head on instead of bypassing them, like expanding torrents, the strategy which we adopted was to bypass them and not come into instead surround them and put a psychological pressure of being surrounded and being bypassed and then losing the will to fight. And that's how we got this 93,000 prisoners alive. If we would have gone down, the aim was to liberate. The aim was to not to destroy the Pakistan army. Time was of consequence, because in the modern days, no country can fight more than 1 month, like a developing country. The United Nations pressure, the superpowers pressure, all those things will be there. So we had to do the operation the earliest. So all these things we had catered for, but what you are saying, the X factor is always there, and possibly they could have taken more time. But with our overwhelming superiority, with this, there's no navy whatsoever of Pakistan in the east. This thing, the only submarine was sunk. They had no air force after 3 days, no navy, no air force. The troops surrounded. There was a very pitiful situation.
Yeah, thank you. Chaitanya, that was a wonderful question you asked. So in the military operations, the first thing is the doctrine. What is the doctrine? What is the purpose for which the war is being fought? So the doctrine comes first, military doctrine for that, the contingency, the plan, and the war for which is being fought. The second thing is the plans, strategic plans and tactical approaches. So one is doctrine, the other is plans, strategic plans. Third is contingency plan, which you are asking. Suppose if this doesn't work, what is the next contingency plan? So you rightly asked the question. In all the military operations, we have this, the doctrine, strategic plans, and contingency plan. So military did have a contingency plan. If this doesn't happen, then we will make this approach. So all that which was available for our armed forces, but then they fought brilliantly within the time limits available. We were able to achieve the purpose of the war and the victory in the war. Any other question from anybody? Raise your hand if you have a question. But otherwise, I want to make one announcement. So one is the Army, the Amity Cadet Corps. Second is SSB Academy. The third one is the Amity College for the Amity Military College for Women and Men. Both are there. Then we have started now a BTech Defense Technology Program, BTech MTech Defense Technology Integrated Program, and also MTech Defense Technology Program. So please, I want to create this awareness among you, the children, that if you want to go into the technology development, defense technology development, Amity has started this initiative, starting from BTech with specialization in defense technology. Then BTech MTech Defense Technology Integrated Program, 5 years program. Then we also have MTech Defense Technology Program, which we have launched. These 3 initiatives. So when you or your relatives, your friends are looking for any of these defense technology development, where you want to do research, development, develop a missile, aircraft, radar, sonars, torpedoes, or life support technologies, CBR in defense technology. So like this, if you want to be in defense technology, combat vehicles, aerospace, naval systems, communication, sensors, high energy materials, directed energy weapons. So if you want to go into these military technology, defense technology development as a scientist, a manufacturer, or a startup, so here is an opportunity. Amity has launched this very, very important initiative, which is unique at the global level. So I want to tell all the children, the teachers, the parents who may be listening to the program, that here is an option. If you want to go and serve the army, armed forces, here is an opportunity. So Colonel Bhatt, so with that, we will conclude, and I appreciate your the way you have presented the whole historical perspectives in the right tenor, and also celebrated the success what the nation has achieved as a whole through our armed forces, through the joint services operations. So there is no parallel for Indian intellect. There is no parallel for Indian valor, courage. Your country is a superpower. Now we had Vedas, Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Yoga, Ayurveda, all this in your country 5,000 years ago. So our country, India, is this. So we wanted to show you on this occasion 75 years of independence and 50 years of Indo Pak conflict, that how our nation has the potential to become a global superpower. So please realize your potential. Don't be like Hanuman's. And we have to, somebody has to tell Hanuman also, you can lift the Parvata also. So we want to tell you, that is why this Amity has organized this. So on behalf of Founder President, Dr. Shuke Chauhan, and also the Chancellor, Dr. Asul Chauhan, and from all members of Amity fraternity, we appreciate you, Colonel Bhatt, Prakash Bhatt, and also all the students, children who are attending the program. And the country is yours, country is ours. So let us make it glorious, glorious in the globe. Let us create a new world through India. A new India let us create, and that will create a new world. So with this, once again, compliments to all the members who have participated, all the participants. We wish you all the best. God bless you, your families, for good health, happiness, peace, prosperity for everyone. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. Thank you so much. And now we can say goodbye to you till we meet again.
Thank you, sir.
I think you can close the event.
Thank you, sir.